The fluorescent lights in the maternity ward buzzed like something dying. I stood there in room 412 at St. Margaret's Medical Center, holding a baby that wasn't mine. I knew it wasn't mine because my daughter had just been taken to the nursery for routine testing. I'd watched the nurse wheel her away 17 minutes ago. I'd counted. And now a different nurse. A young woman I'd never seen, with tired eyes and hands that trembled slightly, had just placed this infant in my arms with a warm smile and the words, "Here's your little one, Mr. Reese." Except the wristband on this baby's ankle said something impossible. It said, "Baby girl Whitfield." Not Reese. Whitfield. My wife's maiden name. Before I continue, you need to understand something. My wife Claire had legally been Claire Reese for 4 years. She'd changed her name the week after our wedding. Her driver's license said Reese. Her passport said Reese. Her credit cards, her insurance, every single document in our lives said Reese. So why was there a baby in this hospital tagged with her maiden name? My first thought was simple: clerical error. Hospitals make mistakes. Someone typed the wrong name into a computer, printed the wrong band. It happens. But then I looked at the rest of the information on the tag. Date of birth, today's date. That made sense. Time of birth, 3:47 a.m. My daughter had been born at 6:12 a.m. This baby was born almost 3 hours before mine. I felt the floor shift beneath me. Not literally. I'm a financial analyst. I don't believe in melodrama. But something fundamental in my understanding of reality had just cracked. I looked at the infant in my arms. She had a full head of dark hair, which struck me as odd because both Claire and I were blonde. Her features were delicate, almost too perfect, and she was sleeping peacefully, unaware that her existence had just detonated a bomb in my chest. "Excuse me," I called out, my voice steady. I'd trained myself over 12 years in finance to never let my voice shake, no matter what the numbers revealed. "I think there's been a mistake." The nurse who'd handed me the baby was already gone. I walked to the doorway of room 412, still holding this mystery child, and looked down the corridor. Empty. The quiet hum of machines and the distant murmur of conversation, but no sign of the young nurse with trembling hands. Claire was asleep in the bed behind me. She'd been through 18 hours of labor, and the epidural had left her exhausted. She hadn't seen the baby being handed to me. She hadn't seen the name on the tag. I had about 30 seconds to make a decision. I could wake her, demand an explanation, watch her face for the truth, or I could stay calm. Gather information. Find out what I was actually dealing with before I revealed what I knew. I chose the second option. I'd spent my entire career analyzing data before making conclusions. I'd watched colleagues lose millions by reacting to incomplete information. And right now, standing in that hospital room with someone else's baby in my arms and my wife unconscious behind me, I had incomplete information. But I had a starting point. I had a name. Whitfield. I had a time. 3:47 a.m. And I had a question that made my blood run cold. Was there another baby in this hospital that belonged to my wife? I pressed the call button beside Claire's bed. A different nurse appeared within 2 minutes. An older woman with gray-streaked hair and a name tag that read, Margaret. "There's been a mix-up," I said calmly. "This isn't my daughter." Margaret's face went through 3 expressions in rapid succession: confusion, alarm, and then something I couldn't quite read. Something that looked almost like recognition. "Let me see the band," she said. I held out the baby's ankle. Margaret's eyes scanned the tag, and I watched her jaw tighten. "I'll take her back to the nursery," she said. "And I'll bring your daughter." I'm so sorry for the confusion, Mr. Reese. The name on the tag, I said. Whitfield. Is there another mother on this floor with that name? Margaret hesitated. It was brief, maybe half a second, but I'd spent years reading people across negotiation tables. I knew hesitation when I saw it. I can't discuss other patients, she said. Privacy regulations. Of course. She took the baby from my arms and left quickly. Too quickly. I stood in the center of room 412, listening to my wife's steady breathing, and felt the first cold thread of dread weave through my chest. Something was wrong. Something was very, very wrong. That's when I realized I wasn't dealing with a clerical error. I was dealing with a secret that had been hiding in plain sight for years, and I was going to find out what it was. Let me tell you who I am, because you need to understand the kind of person who walks into a situation like this. My name is Daniel Reese. I'm 34 years old, and I've worked as a senior financial analyst at Morrison & Webb in downtown Chicago for the past 8 years. Before that, I graduated summa cum laude from Northwestern with a degree in economics and a minor in statistics. I tell you this not to brag, but to explain how my mind works. I see patterns. I catch discrepancies. I notice when numbers don't add up, when stories don't align, when something in the data suggests a truth that people would rather keep hidden. It's made me very good at my job. It's also made me, according to my wife, exhausting to argue with. Claire used to say that as a joke. She'd roll her eyes when I pointed out inconsistencies in her stories about her day, or when I remembered exact dates and times that she'd forgotten. You're like a human lie detector, she'd say. It's terrifying. I always took it as a compliment. Now I wonder if it was a warning. Claire and I met 5 years ago at a charity gala downtown. She was there representing her family's foundation, the Whitfield Family Trust, which funded arts programs for underprivileged youth. I was there because Morrison & Webb had bought a table, and the senior partners wanted young analysts to fill the seats. She was beautiful, not in the obvious way that turns heads, but in the quiet way that makes you want to keep looking. Honey blonde hair, green eyes that seemed to change shade depending on the light, and a smile that made you feel like you were the only person in the room. We talked for 3 hours that night. She told me about growing up in Lake Forest, about her complicated relationship with her mother, about her dream of using her family's money to actually help people, instead of just accumulating more. She was smart and funny and surprisingly down to earth for someone who'd grown up with that kind of wealth. I told her about my childhood in a 2-bedroom apartment in Rogers Park, about putting myself through college with scholarships and part-time jobs, about my plan to make enough money that I'd never have to worry about it again. We're complete opposites, she said that night, laughing. Opposites attract, I replied. It felt like the kind of thing you say in movies, cheesy, predictable. But I meant it. We were engaged within a year, married within 2, and for the past 4 years, I thought I'd been living the kind of life I'd only dreamed about as a kid, counting pennies for the bus fare. A house in Wilmette, a wife I loved, a career I'd built from nothing. And now, finally, a child on the way. Claire's pregnancy had been the happiest 8 months of my life. But looking back, and I've done a lot of looking back since that night in the hospital, I can see the anomalies I should have noticed. The first one happened about 3 months into the pregnancy. We were at dinner with Claire's mother, Patricia Whitfield, at the family's lake house in Lake Geneva. Patricia was old money in every sense of the word. Impeccable manners, designer clothes, and a way of making you feel like you'd never quite measure up. She'd never warmed to me. I wasn't from the right family, the right neighborhood, the right tax bracket. But she tolerated me because Claire loved me, and Patricia loved Claire. That night, over salmon and asparagus, Patricia said something strange. "You'll be using Dr. Hendrickx, of course," she said to Claire. "For the delivery?" Claire nodded. "Of course." "Dr. Hendrickx?" I asked. "I thought we agreed on Dr. Martinez at Northwestern." Claire's fork paused halfway to her mouth, just for a moment. "Dr. Hendrickx has been the family's obstetrician for decades," Patricia said smoothly. "He delivered Claire. He delivered Claire's brother. He's the only choice." "I didn't know you had a brother," I said to Claire. The table went silent. "He died," Claire said quietly. "When I was young. I don't talk about it." Patricia's face had gone very still. "It's not a topic for dinner conversation." I let it drop. It seemed like the right thing to do. People have painful histories. Families have tragedies they don't discuss. I understood that. But later that night, when we were driving home, I asked Claire about it. "What happened to your brother?" "He was stillborn," she said, staring out the passenger window. "My mother was devastated. She never really recovered. That's why she's so controlling." "Protective," Claire corrected. "She's protective. She lost one child. She can't bear to lose another." It made sense. It explained Patricia's intensity, her need to manage every detail of Claire's life. It explained why Claire sometimes seemed to be walking on eggshells around her mother. I filed the information away and moved on. But here's the thing. I'd never heard mention of a brother before that night. In 3 years of dating and 2 years of marriage, not once had Claire mentioned a sibling. Not in passing, not in old photographs, not in any story about her childhood. That was anomaly number 1. Anomaly number 2 happened about 6 weeks before the due date. I came home early from work one Tuesday afternoon. The markets had closed due to a technical issue, and I'd decided to surprise Claire with flowers and takeout from her favorite Thai place. When I walked into the house, I heard her voice coming from the study. She was on the phone, speaking in a low, urgent tone I'd never heard before. "I said it's handled," she was saying. "Mother, please, I know what I'm doing. He doesn't suspect anything. He won't find out." I stood frozen in the hallway, Thai food growing cold in my hands. "The records are sealed," Claire continued. "They have been for years. There's no way he could—" She stopped, listened. I know. I'm not going to let that happen. This is my family too." Then silence. I heard the soft click of the phone being set down. I made a decision in that moment that I'm still not sure was right or wrong. Instead of confronting her, I walked back to the front door, opened and closed it loudly, and called out, "Claire, I'm home early." When I found her in the study a minute later, she was sitting calmly at her desk, scrolling through her laptop. "Daniel," she smiled. "What are you doing home?" "Markets closed early. Brought you pad thai." "You're the best." She kissed me, and I watched her face for any sign of the woman I'd heard on the phone, the one with the hard voice and the secrets. But she was just Claire, my Claire, warm and loving and pregnant with our first child. I didn't ask about the phone call. I didn't mention what I'd heard. I told myself it was probably nothing. Maybe she was planning a surprise for me. Maybe she was dealing with some family financial issue she didn't want to burden me with. Maybe I'd misheard. But he doesn't suspect anything echoed in my head for weeks. Who was he? Was it me? What didn't I suspect? I pushed the questions down, buried them under the excitement of preparing for the baby, setting up the nursery, interviewing pediatricians, assembling the crib, but they never really went away. And now, standing in hospital room 412 with the image of that baby tag burned into my brain, baby girl Whitfield, 3:47 a.m. Those questions came roaring back. He doesn't suspect anything. The records are sealed. This is my family too. What records, Claire? What family? Margaret the nurse returned 20 minutes later with my actual daughter, baby girl Reese, born 6:12 a.m., 7 pounds 4 ounces, blonde hair, blue eyes, unmistakably mine. I held her and felt the complicated mix of love and fear that I suspect all new fathers feel. Love because she was perfect. Fear because I was suddenly aware of how much I didn't know about the woman who had given birth to her. There won't be any more mix-ups, Margaret said. I've made sure of it. Thank you. She started to leave, then paused at the doorway. Mr. Reese? Yes? Sometimes things get complicated in hospitals. Families have situations. If I were you, I'd focus on your beautiful new daughter and let the rest sort itself out. It was meant to be reassuring. It wasn't. The baby that was brought to me by mistake, I said. Baby girl Whitfield. Is she okay? Was her mother found? Margaret's face went carefully blank. I really can't discuss other patients. But she was brought to me. I held her. I have a right to know if... Mr. Reese. Margaret's voice was firm now. Please, just focus on your family. She left. Claire woke up an hour later, groggy and sore but glowing with that new mother radiance that made me fall in love with her all over again. She held our daughter. We'd decided to name her Emma, and cried happy tears. And for a few hours, I let myself forget about the mystery baby with my wife's maiden name. But that night, while Claire and Emma slept, I made a decision. I was going to find out the truth. Not because I wanted to destroy my marriage, not because I assumed the worst about my wife, but because I'd built my entire life on the principle that information is power, and that the truth, however painful, is always better than a beautiful lie. I started with the hospital record system. Every father who comes through the maternity ward at St. Margaret's gets a temporary access code to the patient portal. It allows you to view your baby's records, schedule follow-up appointments, that kind of thing. I logged in using the code they'd given me at admission. The interface was clunky but functional. I navigated to the nursery records for the day, looking for any way to access the broader patient list. I couldn't. Privacy restrictions blocked everything except my own daughter's information. But there was a feature I hadn't noticed before. A search function for previous visits. It was designed so returning patients could review their history with the hospital. On impulse, I typed in Claire's name. Claire Reese, 0 results. Of course. We'd never been to St. Margaret's before. We lived in Wilmette, and this hospital was in Evanston. We'd only chosen it because Dr. Hendrickx, Patricia's insisted upon doctor, had privileges here. Then, almost as an afterthought, I typed in her maiden name, Claire Whitfield, warrant result. I stared at the screen. Claire had been to this hospital before, under her maiden name, before we were married. The record was locked. I couldn't access details. But the date was visible. October 14th, 2016, 8 years ago. Claire and I hadn't met until 2019. What had happened in October 2016 that brought my wife to this hospital? I looked at Claire sleeping peacefully in the hospital bed, our newborn daughter nestled in the bassinet beside her. And I felt something cold settle in my chest. I needed to find out what that visit was for. I needed proof. The next morning, I told Claire I needed to run home for a few hours. Get some rest, I said, kissing her forehead. I'll bring back clean clothes and the stuff from the hospital bag we forgot. You're the best, she murmured, still half asleep. I drove home on autopilot, my mind racing through possibilities. Option 1. The 2016 hospital visit was something innocent. A minor procedure, a friend she was visiting, a volunteer shift. The Whitfields were known for their charity work. Maybe she'd done something at St. Margaret's years ago. Option 2. It wasn't innocent at all. I got home, showered, changed, and started searching. Claire kept meticulous records. It was one of the things I'd always loved about her. She was organized to the point of obsession. Every receipt filed, every document cataloged, every password recorded in a leather-bound notebook she kept in her desk drawer. That notebook was my first target. I found it where it always was, tucked beneath a stack of stationery. I'd seen her reference it dozens of times, but had never thought to look through it myself. It seemed like a violation of privacy. But right now, I needed answers more than I needed to be polite. The notebook was organized alphabetically by institution: banks, utilities, subscriptions. I flipped to the H section: Harper Insurance, HBO Max, Home Depot, no hospitals. Then I tried M, nothing relevant. Then S, St. Margaret's Medical Center. My heart stopped. There was an entry, a login and password for the patient portal. The same patient portal I'd accessed last night. But there was something else. A second entry below it, in smaller handwriting. Records Archive, SM 2016, Storage Unit 247, Glenview Facility, key in jewelry box. I read it 3 times to make sure I was seeing it correctly. Claire had a storage unit I'd never heard of. And whatever was in it was connected to her 2016 visit to St. Margaret's. I found the jewelry box on her dresser. It was an ornate wooden thing that had belonged to her grandmother. I'd seen her open it hundreds of times to retrieve earrings or necklaces. I opened it now and found the usual contents: tangled chains, mismatched earrings, a few pieces of real jewelry mixed with costume stuff. But in the bottom corner, hidden beneath a velvet divider I'd never noticed, was a small brass key. It was stamped with a number, 247. I pocketed the key and drove to Glenview. The storage facility was one of those anonymous industrial complexes off the highway. Rows of orange doors, security cameras, and a bored attendant in a cinder-block office. I showed my ID at the front desk. "I'm here for Unit 247, I said. "Claire Whitfield's unit." The attendant, a young guy with acne scars and a Bears jersey, typed something into his computer. "Claire Whitfield, yeah, unit's been active since 2016, paid up through 2026. He looked at my ID again. "But you're Daniel Reese." "I'm her husband." "Sorry, man. Only authorized users can access. She'd have to add you to the list or be here in person." I felt frustration boil up, but forced it down. "Can you at least tell me when she last accessed it?" He shook his head. "Can't give out that information. Privacy policy." "Right. Privacy policy." I left the facility but didn't go far. I parked across the street and watched the entrance, thinking. Claire had maintained this storage unit for 8 years. She'd never mentioned it. She paid for it out of... what? Her personal account? The Whitfield Family Trust? I realized I had no idea. We'd always kept our finances somewhat separate. Her suggestion, which I'd agreed to because it seemed modern and egalitarian. She had her accounts. I had mine. We had a joint account for household expenses. I'd never questioned it. Now I was questioning everything. I called in a favor. Mark Huang was a forensic accountant I'd worked with on several financial fraud cases at Morrison & Webb. He was meticulous, discreet, and owed me for the time I'd covered for him during his divorce. I need some financial records traced, I told him over the phone. Personal matter. How personal? Very. He was quiet for a moment. You think your wife's hiding something? I don't know what I think. That's why I need your help. Send me what you have. I'll see what I can find. I emailed him the storage facility address and asked him to trace any payments connected to Claire Whitfield or the Whitfield Family Trust. Then I drove back to the hospital. Claire was awake when I arrived, sitting up in bed and feeding Emma. There you are, she said. I was starting to worry. Traffic. I kissed her forehead. How's our girl? Perfect. The pediatrician already came by. All her tests look great. I watched my wife nurse our daughter and felt the cognitive dissonance that had been building since last night reach a breaking point. This was the woman I loved, the mother of my child, and she was keeping secrets that could shatter everything. I have a question, I said carefully. Have you ever been to this hospital before? St. Margaret's? Claire's hand paused, just for a second, adjusting Emma's position. This hospital? I don't think so. Why? No reason. I thought I saw your name on one of the old records when I was setting up the patient portal. Must have been a glitch. Must have been. She didn't meet my eyes. That's when I noticed something I should have caught immediately. Claire was wearing her wedding ring. Nothing unusual about that, except she hadn't been wearing it last night. The nurses had made her remove all jewelry before delivery. Protocol. When did you get your ring back? I asked. Oh. She glanced at her hand. One of the nurses brought it this morning. They had it in a safe. Which nurse? I don't remember. A younger one. Dark hair. The same nurse who'd brought me the wrong baby? That's nice of them, I said. But something else had caught my attention. The ring on Claire's finger wasn't quite right. It looked like her ring, same platinum band, same princess-cut diamond, but the diamond seemed slightly larger, brighter, new. Was I imagining it? I decided to test something. Remember when you scratched it? I asked. On the garden gate last summer? The jeweler said the mark would always be visible under magnification. Claire looked at her ring, then at me. I remember. Want me to check if it's still there? I've got my phone loop in the car. Might be fun to look, see if the hospital cleaning removed it. Her face went very still. That's silly, she said. It's just a ring. I know, but... Daniel. Her voice sharpened. I just had a baby. Can we not make everything into an investigation? I held up my hands in surrender. Of course. Sorry. Just making conversation. But I'd seen what I needed to see. The woman I'd married would have laughed at the suggestion, held out her hand, played along with my silly little test. This Claire, the Claire with secrets, had shut it down. That ring wasn't her original ring. I was almost certain of it. Which meant someone had switched it. But why? And what else had been switched? Over the next 2 days, I collected evidence. Evidence piece number 2 came from Dr. Hendrickx. He visited Claire's room on our second day in the hospital. A distinguished-looking man in his 60s, with silver hair and the kind of bedside manner that probably cost $800 an hour. Everything looks excellent, he told us. You and baby should be ready to go home tomorrow. Thank you, doctor, Claire said, for everything. My pleasure. You know your family has been coming to me for decades. I saw my opening. I didn't realize you'd been treating Claire before, I said casually. She mentioned she'd never been to St. Margaret's. Dr. Hendrickx's smile faltered for just a second. Well, he said slowly. I have privileges at several hospitals. Perhaps she's confused our previous appointments with other facilities. Previous appointments? I kept my voice light. For what? Standard women's health, he said. Nothing to concern yourself with. He left shortly after, but his hesitation told me everything. Dr. Hendrickx had treated Claire before, at this hospital, and he was covering for her. Evidence piece number 3 came from Mark Huang. He called me that evening while Claire was sleeping. Found something interesting, he said. That storage unit in Glenview, it's paid annually from an account at First Lake Shore Bank. The account is in the name of the Whitfield Family Trust. That's Claire's family's foundation. Right. But here's the thing. The payment is coded as medical archive storage. It's been categorized that way since 2016. Medical archives? That's what the records say. And there's something else. The trust has been making annual payments to a private adoption agency in Wisconsin. Started in 2017, continuing to present day. The floor dropped out from under me. An adoption agency? The Lakeview Children's Placement Center in Milwaukee. $15,000 a year. No explanation in the trust records, but it's logged as a charitable donation. I thanked Mark and hung up. An adoption agency, medical archives in a storage unit, a hospital visit in 2016. The pieces were starting to form a picture, and I didn't like what I was seeing. The next morning, before we were discharged, I made an excuse to visit the hospital's medical records department. I need copies of my daughter's birth records, I told the administrator, a tired-looking woman in her 50s. Of course, I can have those ready within the hour. Thank you. And I was wondering, I think there was some confusion with the nursery yesterday. A baby was brought to our room by mistake. Is there any way to confirm that's been sorted out? The administrator typed something into her computer. I see a note here about a nursery mix-up. Baby girl Whitfield, room 412. That's us, room 412. The note says the situation was resolved and baby Whitfield was returned to... She frowned. What is it? It says here baby Whitfield was returned to the nursery pending... I can't read this. The note's incomplete. Pending what? I really can't say. Privacy regulations. But I can tell you the baby was transferred to another facility yesterday afternoon. Another facility? Which one? I'm sorry, I can't. Privacy regulations. I understand. But I didn't leave it there. Evidence piece number 4. I found the young nurse. Her name was Sarah Chen. I discovered this by watching the nursing rotation and catching her as she came off shift at 7 a.m. Excuse me, I said, catching up with her in the parking lot. You brought a baby to my room 2 days ago. The wrong baby. Sarah froze. She was young, mid-20s, with dark circles under her eyes and the hunted look of someone carrying a heavy burden. I don't know what you're talking about. Baby girl Whitfield. You handed her to me and said she was mine. But she wasn't, and now I can't find out what happened to her. I told you, I'm not trying to get you in trouble, I said. I just need to understand. My wife's maiden name was Whitfield. That baby was tagged with her name. Is there a connection? Sarah's face went pale. You should ask your wife. She says she doesn't know anything about it. Sarah looked around the parking lot, as if checking for witnesses. Look, she said quietly. I was told to bring that baby to your room. I didn't question it. Someone higher up gave the order. Who? I don't know. The request came through the system. But after I realized the mistake, I looked at the baby's records. She paused. The birth mother's name was listed as Claire Whitfield. Same date of birth, Same social security number as your wife. That's impossible. My wife just gave birth to our daughter 12 hours before I held that other baby. I know. That's why I looked closer. Sarah's voice dropped even lower. The records show Claire Whitfield was admitted 2 days before you arrived. She was in labor for 16 hours before giving birth at 3:47 a.m. Then she was transferred to a private recovery suite. A private recovery suite? I never saw. It's on a different floor, the family suites. They're for special patients, VIP, people who want privacy. My mind was reeling. You're telling me my wife was at this hospital, giving birth before we checked in for the birth of our daughter? I'm telling you the records say that. Whether it's true or some kind of error, I don't know. Sarah looked genuinely frightened now. But I'd stop asking questions if I were you. The people involved in this, they're not the kind of people you want to upset. Who? Who's involved? She shook her head and walked quickly to her car. I stood in the parking lot, the cold morning air biting at my face, and felt the last of my certainty crumble. Either the hospital records were catastrophically wrong, or my wife had somehow given birth to 2 babies in the same hospital within 3 hours. Neither option made sense, but one of them had to be true. I stayed calm. I needed proof. We brought Emma home that afternoon. The nursery was ready, the house was clean, and Claire's mother, Patricia, was waiting for us with flowers and congratulations, and that tight smile that always made me feel like I was being evaluated. She's beautiful, Patricia said, looking at Emma. Perfect Whitfield genes. I didn't correct her use of the maiden name. I just watched. I assume you'll want time to settle in, Patricia continued, speaking to Claire. I can have Mrs. Hernandez come by tomorrow to help with housework. That would be nice, Claire said. Thank you, Mother. The way she said mother struck me for the first time. Not mom, not mama, always mother, formal, distant, like she was speaking to an employer rather than a parent. Daniel, Patricia said, turning to me. Might I have a word? In private? Of course. I followed her to the back patio. The November air was crisp, and the trees in our backyard had dropped most of their leaves. I want to thank you, Patricia said, for taking such good care of my daughter. She's my wife. It's what I do. Yes. Patricia studied me with those cool green eyes, the same eyes Claire had inherited. I understand there was some confusion at the hospital, a baby mix-up. I felt my guard go up instantly. How did you know about that? I have friends at St. Margaret's. They keep me informed. Friends who share confidential patient information. Patricia's smile thinned. Friends who care about the well-being of my family, as I'm sure you do. Of course. Then I'm sure you understand that some matters are best left in the past. Some questions are better left unasked, for everyone's sake. It was a threat, politely delivered, elegantly phrased, but a threat nonetheless. I don't know what you mean, I said. I think you do. And I think you're smart enough to know when to stop digging. She reached out and touched my arm, a gesture that was probably meant to seem maternal but felt more like a warning. Claire loves you. Emma needs a stable home. Don't jeopardize that by chasing ghosts. She went back inside before I could respond. Ghosts. Was that what she called them? The secrets she'd buried so deep that even mentioning them felt dangerous? I was done being warned off. I was going to find the truth, no matter who tried to stop me. That night, after Claire and Emma were asleep, I went online and searched for the Lakeview Children's Placement Center in Milwaukee. Their website was professional but sparse. A few stock photos of happy families, information about their services, contact details. They specialized in private adoptions, particularly for families seeking discretion. I noted the address and started planning. The next morning, I told Claire I had to go into the office. "On your paternity leave?" She looked surprised. "Emergency with the Harrington account. Just a few hours." "Okay, hurry back." I drove to Milwaukee. The Lakeview Children's Placement Center was in a converted Victorian house on a quiet residential street. It looked respectable, established, exactly the kind of place that wealthy families would trust with their most delicate problems. I walked in and introduced myself as a potential adoptive parent. "My wife and I have been trying to conceive," I told the administrator, a polished woman named Diane. "We're exploring all our options." "Of course," Diane said warmly. "We help many families in your situation. Actually, I heard about your center from a friend. She said your discretion was exceptional. We pride ourselves on privacy. Many of our clients prefer to keep their family-building journeys private. My friend's name was Whitfield, Patricia Whitfield. She said her family has worked with you." I watched Diane's face carefully. The recognition was instant and quickly suppressed. "I'm afraid I can't confirm or deny any client relationships," she said. "As I mentioned, privacy is paramount." "Of course. But if I wanted to pursue a similar arrangement to what the Whitfield family has, how would that work?" Diane studied me for a long moment. "Perhaps you should speak with your friend directly. I'm sure she can explain her family's experience better than I could." "I would, but Patricia and I aren't exactly close. I'm actually her son-in-law. I married her daughter Claire." Something shifted in Diane's expression. Surprise, maybe, or alarm. "I see. I recently learned that the Whitfield Trust has been making annual payments to your organization for about 8 years now. I'm curious about what those payments are for." Diane stood up. "Mr. Reese, I think it's best if you leave." "Why? What's the Whitfield family paying you for?" "I said you should leave." "Is there a child? A child connected to my wife?" Diane's hand moved toward her desk phone. "I'm going to have to ask you to go, or I'll call security. Just tell me if there's a child. That's all I need to know." "Mr. Reese," I held up my hands. "I'm going, but I'll be back, with a lawyer and a court order if necessary." I left the building and sat in my car for a long time, thinking. Diane's reaction had told me everything. There was a child connected to the Whitfields, a child that someone had gone to great lengths to hide. I just didn't know whose child it was, or where they were now. My next stop was a private investigator. I'd gotten Marcus Webb's name from a colleague at work who'd used him during a nasty divorce. "He's expensive but thorough," my colleague had said. "We found things about my ex that even she'd forgotten." Marcus's office was above a dry cleaner in Skokie, a small space crammed with file cabinets and computer equipment. He was a large black man in his 50s with military posture and careful eyes. "Tell me what you need," he said. I told him everything. The hospital mix-up, the baby tag with my wife's maiden name, the storage unit, the adoption agency payments, Sarah Chen's claims about the hospital records. Marcus listened without interrupting, making occasional notes on a yellow legal pad. When I finished, he said, "What do you think is happening?" "I don't know. That's why I'm here." "But you have a theory." I hesitated. "I think my wife had a baby before we met. A baby that was either given up for adoption or, I don't know, hidden somehow. And I think the baby that was brought to me at the hospital might have been that child." Why would someone bring an 8-year-old child's records to a maternity ward? Not 8 years old, a newborn, tagged with my wife's name from 8 years ago. I shook my head. It doesn't make sense. Unless what? Unless there's been another baby. Recently. One I didn't know about. Marcus set down his pen. You think your wife gave birth to a second child without you knowing? I think something impossible happened in that hospital, and I think someone is going to great lengths to cover it up. Family money can buy a lot of silence. The Whitfields have plenty of family money. Marcus nodded slowly. I'll look into it. The storage unit, the adoption agency, the hospital records. I'll see what I can find. How long? Give me a week. Maybe less if I get lucky. I gave him a retainer and my contact information. One more thing, he said as I was leaving. Be careful how you act around your wife. If she's hiding something this big, she might get dangerous if she thinks you're onto her. Claire's not dangerous. Mr. Reese, in my experience, everyone is dangerous when their secrets are threatened. Everyone. I drove home thinking about that. Was Claire dangerous? The woman who cried at dog food commercials and couldn't kill a spider? But then I remembered the phone call I'd overheard. He doesn't suspect anything. The coldness in her voice. The calculation. Maybe I didn't know my wife as well as I thought I did. The next few days were a masterclass in acting normal. I changed diapers. I heated bottles. I got up for 3 a.m. feedings. I played the role of the devoted new father while simultaneously building a case against my wife. It was exhausting and soul-crushing and necessary. Evidence piece number 5 came from an unexpected source. Claire's younger sister, Hannah, came to visit 3 days after we brought Emma home. Hannah was 28, unmarried, and perpetually anxious. The kind of person who seemed to carry the weight of the world on her shoulders. I'd always liked Hannah. Unlike Patricia, she'd welcomed me into the family without reservation. She seemed genuinely happy that Claire had found love. But that day, watching Hannah hold Emma, I noticed something I'd never paid attention to before. The way Hannah looked at babies. It wasn't the cooing, adoring expression most people have around infants. It was something more complex. Longing mixed with grief. The look of someone mourning what they'd lost. She's beautiful, Hannah whispered, tears in her eyes. Just beautiful. Thank you, Claire said. Are you okay? I'm fine. Just hormonal or something. Hannah laughed, but it was hollow. You know how I get around babies. Later, when Claire was upstairs with Emma, I cornered Hannah in the kitchen. Can I ask you something personal? Hannah tensed. I guess. What happened in 2016? Her face went white. I don't know what you mean. I think you do. Something happened to Claire. Something at St. Margaret's Hospital. Something your mother has been covering up ever since. Daniel, please. I'm not going to hurt her. I love her. But I need to understand. Whatever secret your family is keeping, it's affecting my life now. I have a right to know. Hannah's hands were shaking. She set down her coffee cup before she could spill it. If I tell you, she said quietly, my mother will never forgive me. I won't tell her how I found out. Hannah looked toward the stairs, as if checking that Claire wasn't listening. Claire was pregnant before, she whispered. In 2016, before you met. Before everything. Pregnant by who? A man named Thomas Mercer. They were together for 2 years. Claire loved him. She wanted to marry him. What happened? Thomas was killed. Car accident. 3 months into Claire's pregnancy. Hannah's voice cracked. Claire was devastated. She couldn't, she couldn't function. Mother took over, made all the decisions. What decisions? Claire gave birth in October, at St. Margaret's, a baby girl. Hannah wiped her eyes. Mother convinced her to give the baby up for adoption. Said it was the best thing for everyone. Claire was too broken to argue. The Lakeview Center? Hannah nodded. They handled everything. Private adoption, sealed records. No one was supposed to ever know. But someone knows. Someone sent a baby to my room with Claire's maiden name on the tag. Hannah's face crumpled. I don't understand that. I don't understand any of this. As far as I know, that baby was adopted and living somewhere with a happy family. She'd be 8 years old now. 8 years old, not a newborn. So who was the baby in the hospital? Hannah, is it possible that Claire was pregnant again? Recently? Without telling me? What? No, that's impossible. She's been with you for 5 years. How would she hide a pregnancy? I don't know. But the hospital records suggest… What records? I told her about Sarah Chen's claims, about the dual admission, about baby girl Whitfield being born at 3:47 a.m. Hannah listened with growing horror. That's insane, she said when I finished. Claire was with you for the entire pregnancy. You would have noticed if there was. I know. It doesn't make sense. Unless the records are wrong, or unless someone falsified them. Why would anyone do that? I don't know, but I'm going to find out. Hannah grabbed my arm. Daniel, be careful. Mother has connections. People who do things for her. If she thinks you're threatening Claire or the family, she'll what? I don't know. I've never seen anyone push back against her. But I've seen what happens to people who get in her way. They disappear. From the social register, from business dealings, from everything. Hannah looked frightened. She's not a person you want as an enemy. Thanks for the warning. Please don't tell her I talked to you. I won't. Hannah left soon after, making excuses about errands and appointments. I sat alone in my kitchen, processing what I'd learned. Claire had a daughter born in 2016 given up for adoption, supposedly living somewhere with a different family. But then who was the baby in the hospital? And why did the records show Claire being admitted twice? I didn't want to believe it, but the pieces were pointing towards something unthinkable. Either Claire had somehow gotten pregnant a second time without my knowledge, perhaps through an affair, perhaps through something more sinister, or the hospital records had been deliberately falsified. Neither option was comforting. I needed to see what was in that storage unit. Evidence piece number 6. I found a way in. The storage facility required either Claire's authorization or a court order to access Unit 247. But Marcus, my PI, had a contact who worked for the facility's security company. The cameras go through a maintenance window every night at 2 a.m., Marcus told me over the phone. 5 minutes of darkness while the system reboots. If you have a key, you could get in and out without anyone knowing. Isn't that illegal? Probably. But so is whatever your wife is hiding. You want the truth or not? I wanted the truth. At 1:30 a.m. the following night, I parked my car a block from the storage facility and walked the rest of the way on foot. The facility was quiet. The office was dark. Only a few exterior lights illuminated the rows of orange doors. I waited near Unit 247, watching my phone's clock tick toward 2:00. At 1:59, I positioned myself at the unit's door, key in hand. At 2:00, the camera's indicator lights blinked off. I opened the padlock and stepped inside. The unit was small, maybe 8 by 10 feet, filled with cardboard boxes and plastic bins. The smell of paper and dust hung in the air. I turned on my phone's flashlight and started opening boxes. The first box contained medical records, stacks of them, all bearing the name Claire Whitfield. I photographed as many as I could, not taking time to read them in detail. The second box held photographs. Claire as a baby, Claire as a teenager, Claire with a man I didn't recognize, Thomas Mercer, I assumed, and Claire, visibly pregnant, standing in front of this very hospital. St. Margaret's. The date on the back of the photo, October 2016. I kept digging. The third box was different, smaller, sealed with tape that had been opened and resealed multiple times. Inside, I found a single folder. The folder contained a birth certificate. Baby girl Whitfield, born October 14, 2016, St. Margaret's Medical Center. Mother, Claire Whitfield. Father, Thomas Mercer, and handwritten at the bottom, in Patricia Whitfield's distinctive script, placed with Lakeview Center 10-17-16. Arranged with Dr. Hendrickx, the family's obstetrician, the man who'd delivered Claire, the man who'd insisted on handling my daughter's birth. He was involved. I kept looking. Beneath the birth certificate was another document, an agreement of some kind, written in dense legal language. I photographed it quickly, not understanding all the terms, and then I found the letter. It was dated 2 months ago, from the Lakeview Children's Placement Center. Dear Mrs. Whitfield, as per your instructions, we have located the adoptive family of baby girl Whitfield, case number LCP 2016-4471, and confirmed the child's current status. Due to unforeseen circumstances, the adoptive parents have requested termination of the adoption agreement. The child has been returned to our care and is currently residing at our auxiliary facility, pending placement or family reclamation. Per your original agreement, you have first right of refusal for custody. Please advise how you wish to proceed. Respectfully, Diane Mercer, Director Home. I stared at the letter, my mind struggling to process what I was reading. The adoptive parents had given up Claire's first child. The child was back with the agency, and Patricia had first right of refusal for custody. 2 months ago. What had Patricia done? I looked at my phone. 2:04 a.m. I had 1 minute before the cameras came back online. I shoved the folder back into the box, sealed it, and left the unit, locking the door behind me. At 2:05, as I reached the edge of the parking lot, the indicator lights on the cameras blinked back on. I walked quickly to my car and drove home, my head spinning with implications. Claire's first daughter, the child she'd given up 8 years ago, was back. And Patricia knew. The question was, did Claire? The next morning, I confronted my wife. Not with accusations, not with evidence, just with questions. I need to ask you something, I said over breakfast. And I need you to be honest with me. Claire looked up from her coffee, her expression guarded. Okay. Before we met, were you ever pregnant? The color drained from her face. Why are you asking me that? Because I found some things that suggest you had a child. Before us. Claire's hands began to shake. She set down her coffee cup very carefully. Daniel, just tell me the truth. Please, whatever happened, we can work through it. But I need to know. She was silent for a long moment. Then, very quietly, she said, her name was going to be Sophie. I felt the breath leave my body. She was born in October 2016, Claire continued, her voice barely above a whisper. Thomas and I, we were going to get married. We were so happy. And then he died, and everything fell apart. Why didn't you tell me? Because it hurts too much to talk about. Because Mother convinced me that giving her up was the right thing. Because I wanted to start fresh with you, without the baggage of my past. Tears were streaming down her face now. I never meant to lie to you. I couldn't. I understand, I said, and part of me did. But another part of me was still putting pieces together. Claire, something happened at the hospital. When Emma was born, a baby was brought to our room, a baby tagged with your maiden name. Claire looked up sharply. What? Baby girl Whitfield, born at 3:47 a.m., 3 hours before Emma. The nurse said the records showed you being admitted twice. That's impossible. I know, but it happened, and I need to understand why. Claire shook her head, looking genuinely confused. I don't know. I don't know anything about a second baby. I only had Emma. I promise you. I wanted to believe her. Looking into her eyes, seeing her confusion and fear, I almost did. But too many things didn't add up. The adoption agency, I said. Lakeview Center. Your mother's been paying them annually since 2017. What? Claire looked shocked. I didn't know that. The adoption was supposed to be final, closed. I never wanted to think about it again. 2 months ago, they sent your mother a letter. The adoptive parents gave Sophie back. She's in agency custody now. No. Claire's voice cracked. No, that can't be true. She was supposed to have a good life, a happy family. That's what Mother promised. Your mother didn't tell you? She didn't tell me anything. I watched Claire carefully. Her distress seemed genuine. Her confusion seemed real. Either she was telling the truth, or she was a far better actress than I'd ever imagined. There's something else, I said. The baby that was brought to our room. She was transferred to another facility after the mix-up. I haven't been able to find out where. Claire's face went very still. You think... She couldn't finish the sentence. I don't know what I think, but I think your mother is involved, and I think she's been keeping things from both of us. Claire stood up abruptly. I need to call her. Wait. No. There was steel in her voice now. If Mother has been hiding something about Sophie, about my daughter, I need to know, now. She grabbed her phone and dialed. I listened as she spoke to Patricia, her voice rising with each exchange. Mother, why is the trust paying the adoption agency annually? What do you mean, arrangements? Is Sophie back with them? Don't lie to me, Mother. Don't you dare lie to me. There was a long silence as Patricia responded. Then Claire said something that made my blood run cold. What do you mean she's been here the whole time? Evidence piece number 7, Patricia's confession. An hour later, Patricia Whitfield arrived at our house. She was composed as always, impeccably dressed, radiating the controlled calm of someone who'd spent a lifetime managing difficult situations. But there was something different in her eyes, a wariness I'd never seen before. But before you begin interrogating me, she said, settling into our living room couch, let me explain. Please do, Claire said icily. When you gave up Sophie, you were in no condition to make decisions. You were grief-stricken, barely functioning. I did what I thought was best. What did you do? Patricia took a deep breath. The adoption was arranged through Lakeview, a lovely family from Minnesota. Everything was legal and proper. But I insisted on a safety clause. What kind of safety clause? I asked. First right of refusal. If anything ever happened to the adoptive family, Sophie would come back to us, back to the Whitfields. That sounds reasonable, I said. What aren't you telling us? Patricia's mask slipped for just a moment. The adoptive parents. They weren't suitable. Their marriage fell apart. Financial troubles. Substance issues. By the time Sophie was 5, she'd been removed from their care by child services. Claire made a sound like she'd been punched. Lakeview contacted me immediately, Patricia continued. They said Sophie was traumatized, damaged, in need of stability. They asked if the family wanted to exercise our right of refusal. What did you say? I said yes. Claire's face contorted. You took my daughter? Without telling me? I didn't take her. I placed her with a family I trust, a family who could give her the care she needed. What family? Patricia looked at me, then back at Claire. The Hendrickx family. Dr. Hendrickx and his wife had been unable to have children of their own. They were ideal candidates. Dr. Hendrickx, the family obstetrician, the man who'd delivered Claire, who'd insisted on delivering Emma, who'd been covering for the Whitfields for decades. Sophie has been living with my doctor? Claire's voice was barely a whisper. She's been well cared for. Good schools, stable home, plenty of resources. She's thriving. She's thriving? She's been living 20 miles from me for 3 years, and you never told me? You had moved on, Claire. You had Daniel, a new life, a new baby on the way. Why dredge up painful memories? Claire stood up, her whole body shaking with rage. You had no right. She's my daughter. Mine. She's also my granddaughter, and I made the decision I thought was best for everyone. Get out. Claire, get out of my house. Patricia stood slowly, gathering her purse with exaggerated dignity. When you've calmed down, we can discuss this like adults. I said get out. Patricia left without another word. Claire collapsed onto the couch, sobbing. I held her, not knowing what else to do. But my mind was racing. Patricia's story explained some things. Sophie's return to the agency, the annual payments, Dr. Hendrickx's involvement. But it didn't explain the baby in the hospital. If Sophie was 8 years old and living with the Hendrickx family, who was baby girl Whitfield? I stayed calm. I needed more proof. Evidence piece number 8 came from Marcus, the PI. I found something strange in the hospital records, he told me over the phone that evening. That dual admission you mentioned? It's definitely in the system. Claire Whitfield admitted twice on the same day. How is that possible? It's not. I mean, it shouldn't be. But here's where it gets weird. The second admission, the one at 3:47 a.m., was entered by a user ID associated with Dr. Hendrickx. Dr. Hendrickx created a fake hospital admission. Looks like it. And there's more. The baby associated with that admission, baby girl Whitfield, was never in the nursery. She was transferred directly to the family suite, then discharged to Dr. Hendrickx's personal custody 12 hours later. Personal custody? Not adoption, not foster care. The records just say family member care. But get this, the baby's DNA profile is in the system, and it doesn't match any known child in the Child Services database. Whose DNA does it match? I'm still working on that, but the records suggest she was born at St. Margaret's 9 days before your daughter. She was kept in the NICU until the day you arrived, then transferred to the regular nursery. That's when she was brought to your room by mistake. Why would Dr. Hendrickx create a fake admission in my wife's name for someone else's baby? That's what I'm trying to figure out. But here's my theory. Someone needed that baby to have documentation. A birth certificate, medical records, legal standing, and they used your wife's identity to create it. Without Claire's knowledge? Possibly. Or with her participation. Hard to say at this point. I thanked Marcus and hung up. A baby that wasn't Claire's, registered under Claire's maiden name, delivered by the family doctor, and now in his personal custody. What the hell was going on? I confronted Dr. Hendrickx the next day. I'd called his office and made an appointment, claiming I wanted to discuss postnatal care for Claire and Emma. When I arrived, I was shown into his private office. Wood-paneled, expensive art. The trappings of old money and professional success. "Mr. Reese," he said, shaking my hand. "What can I do for you?" "You can tell me who baby girl Whitfield is." His face went carefully blank. "I'm afraid I don't know what you mean." "The baby registered under my wife's maiden name. Born 9 days ago. Transferred to your personal custody." "Who is she?" Dr. Hendrickx sat down heavily. "How did you find out about that?" "Does it matter?" "I know. Now I want the truth." He was quiet for a long moment. Then, surprising me, he reached into his desk drawer and pulled out a photograph. It showed a young girl, maybe 7 or 8, with dark hair and green eyes. She was smiling, but there was something guarded in her expression. "This is Sophie," he said. "Claire's biological daughter. She's been living with me and my wife for 3 years." "I know about Sophie. That's not what I'm asking about. I'm asking about the newborn, baby girl Whitfield." Dr. Hendrickx's hand trembled slightly as he set down the photograph. Sophie was pregnant. The words hit me like a physical blow. What? Sophie is 8 years old. She was assaulted by someone she trusted, a teacher at her school. His voice was heavy with grief and anger. She became pregnant at 8 years old. I felt sick. The Whitfield family Patricia decided that the baby should be born and placed for adoption, quietly, discreetly, without anyone knowing. Sophie is 8. How could she? She was advanced for her age, physically mature. These cases are rare, but they happen. Dr. Hendrickx looked old suddenly, defeated. "I delivered the baby myself, here at St. Margaret's, in secret. And you registered her under Claire's name because Sophie has no legal identity. Not as a Whitfield anyway. Patricia arranged for her adoption records to be sealed so completely that she officially doesn't exist. If we'd registered the baby under Sophie's name, questions would have been asked, investigations launched. The whole ugly situation would have been exposed. So you committed fraud." "I protected a traumatized child." Dr. Hendrickx's voice hardened. "Sophie has been through enough. She doesn't need reporters and social workers and courtroom testimony on top of everything else." "What about justice? The teacher who did this has been dealt with, privately." The way he said "dealt with" made me not want to ask follow-up questions. "Where's the baby now?" "With my wife. We're arranging for adoption through the same agency that handled Sophie." "Does Claire know about any of this?" Patricia didn't think it was necessary to involve her. Claire's daughter, her biological daughter, was sexually assaulted, got pregnant at 8 years old, gave birth in secret, and no one told Claire. Patricia felt. I don't care what Patricia felt. Claire has a right to know. Dr. Hendrickx looked at me with something like desperation. "Mr. Reese, Daniel, please. If this gets out, it will destroy everyone. Sophie, the baby, Claire, the Whitfield family. Is that what you want?" "What I want is the truth." "You have the truth. Now what are you going to do with it?" I walked out without answering. That night I told Claire everything. I told her about the storage unit, the letter from Lakeview, Patricia's confession about Sophie, Dr. Hendrickx's revelation about Sophie's pregnancy and the secret birth. Claire listened in silence, her face growing more ashen with each word. When I finished, She didn't cry. She didn't scream. She just sat there, staring at nothing. "My daughter," she finally said. "My 8-year-old daughter. And they didn't tell me. I'm sorry. All this time she's been so close, living with Hendrickx, going through that." Her voice cracked, and I didn't know. I couldn't protect her. "You didn't know. I should have known. I should have fought harder to stay in her life. I should have told you the truth from the beginning." She looked at me with red-rimmed eyes. "Can you ever forgive me?" "There's nothing to forgive. You were manipulated. By your mother, by Hendrickx, by everyone who was supposed to protect you." "What do we do now?" That's when I realized this wasn't drama. It wasn't a family scandal to be managed or a secret to be kept. It was a crime. Multiple crimes. Falsified records. Medical fraud. Child abuse covered up by people with money and power. And it was a system the Whitfields had built over years, using their wealth and connections to operate outside the rules that applied to everyone else. I was going to tear that system down. Evidence piece number 9. I found a lawyer. Not the kind of lawyer the Whitfields used. The silver-haired partners at white shoe firms who protected wealthy families from the consequences of their actions. I found Rebecca Chen, a former prosecutor turned child advocacy attorney who'd made her career going after people who hurt kids. She'd taken down church officials, corporate executives, and yes, wealthy families who thought their money made them untouchable. "Tell me everything," she said when we met in her office. I told her. When I finished, she leaned back in her chair. "The crimes you're describing, medical fraud, falsified birth records, covering up child sexual assault, conspiracy to obstruct justice, are serious. But the Whitfields have resources. They'll fight hard. I know. And going after them will mean exposing everything. Sophie's history, the assault, the secret birth. It'll be traumatic for everyone involved." I know that too. But the alternative is letting them continue. Letting Patricia make decisions about my wife's children without her knowledge or consent. Letting Dr. Hendrickx falsify records whenever it's convenient. Letting them operate like they're above the law. Rebecca nodded slowly. "You're right. And there's something else to consider. If the perpetrator, the teacher who assaulted Sophie, was dealt with privately, that means he's potentially still out there, potentially still a threat to other children. Can we find out who he was? We can try. The school records, any police reports that might have been filed and then buried, witness statements. If we can prove the Whitfields covered up a criminal assault to protect their reputation, that changes everything. What's the first step? Get me everything you have. The photographs from the storage unit, the letter from Lakeview, any financial records showing payments to the adoption agency or to Hendrickx. I'll start building a case. And Sophie? The baby? Child Protective Services will need to be involved eventually. But first, we need to make sure there's a safe place for them to go. Somewhere Patricia can't reach. Our home. They can come here. Rebecca studied me. You're willing to take in your wife's daughter and her child? Even knowing everything you know? They're family. Whatever else is true, they're family. Then let's get to work. Over the next week, I gathered evidence obsessively. Evidence piece number 10. Financial records showing Patricia had paid nearly $500,000 to Lakeview over 8 years, far more than standard donations, suggesting ongoing payments for silence and services. Evidence piece number 11. Emails between Patricia and Dr. Hendrickx discussing the situation and containment strategies. Evidence piece number 12. School records for Sophie that Rebecca obtained through legal channels, showing she'd been abruptly withdrawn from her previous school 3 years ago, around the time she was moved to the Hendrickx household. Evidence piece number 13. A police report filed and then marked resolved without action, documenting a complaint against a teacher at that school. The teacher's name was redacted, but the timing matched perfectly. The trap was coming together. But we needed one more thing: testimony. Someone willing to speak against the Whitfields on the record. I found that witness in the most unexpected place. Hannah came to see me late one evening, looking like she hadn't slept in days. "I know what you're doing," she said. "Rebecca Chen is a friend of a friend. She told someone who told someone else that you're building a case against Mother. Are you here to try to stop me?" "No." Hannah took a deep breath. "I'm here to help." "Why?" "Because I was there. When Sophie was assaulted, I was the one who found out first, and Mother made me keep quiet. I felt my heart rate accelerate. Tell me everything." Sophie was living with the Hendrickx. I visited her sometimes. Mother couldn't stop me entirely, even if she didn't like it. One day, I noticed bruises. Sophie was acting strange, withdrawn. When I finally got her to talk to me, she told me about her teacher, a man named Richard Gaines. "What did you do?" "I went to Mother. I thought she'd call the police, file charges, make sure he was punished." Hannah's voice shook. Instead, she told me to be quiet. She said she'd handle it. A week later, Richard Gaines resigned from his teaching position and left the state. No charges, no consequences. "And you stayed quiet?" "I was terrified. Mother threatened to cut me off completely if I said anything. I had no money of my own, no career, nothing. I was trapped." Tears streamed down Hannah's face. "But this has haunted me ever since. Knowing what happened to Sophie and not being able to help her. Knowing that man is out there somewhere, probably doing the same thing to other children. Will you testify? On the record?" "Yes. I'll tell everything I know. About Sophie, about Mother's cover-up, about Richard Gaines, whatever it takes." I reached out and took her hand. "Thank you, Hannah. This is going to help save them." "I hope so. I hope it's not too late." That's when I heard the sentence that changed everything. My phone rang. It was Marcus, the PI. "I found Richard Gaines," he said. "He's working at an elementary school in Indiana. Same position, same access to children." The monster was still hunting, and we were running out of time. Rebecca Chen moved fast. Within 48 hours, she'd filed an emergency motion with the Indiana State Court, alerting them to Gaines's history and requesting immediate suspension pending investigation. Simultaneously, she'd contacted the Illinois Department of Children and Family Services regarding Sophie's situation, and she'd begun preparing civil and criminal complaints against Patricia Whitfield, Dr. Hendrickx, and everyone else involved in the cover-up. "The key," Rebecca told me, "is coordinated action. If we move on one front, they'll try to shut down the others. We need to hit them all at once." "When?" "Friday, 3 days from now. I've arranged for press coverage, a reporter from the Tribune who specializes in these cases." "Press coverage? Is that necessary? With a family like the Whitfields?" "Absolutely. They'll try to make this go away quietly. Settlements, NDAs, sealed records. The only way to ensure real accountability is public exposure." I thought about what that would mean for Claire, for Sophie, for the baby who'd never asked to be born into this nightmare. Can we protect them from the media attention? We can try, but some exposure is inevitable. Rebecca's voice softened. "Daniel, I know this is hard, But sometimes the only way to heal is to let the wound breathe. Okay, Friday. I went home and told Claire the timeline. 3 days, she said quietly, and then everything comes out. Are you ready? No, but I don't think I'll ever be ready, so we might as well do it. I've been thinking, before the public announcement, we should try to see Sophie. Let her know what's coming. Make sure she has support. Claire's eyes filled with tears. I haven't seen her since she was a baby. She won't even know who I am. She deserves to meet her real mother. Whatever happens after, she deserves that. How? Mother and Hendrickx will never allow it. Leave that to me. The next morning, I drove to Dr. Hendrick's house. It was a colonial revival in Kenilworth, one of the wealthiest suburbs in America. The lawn was perfectly manicured, the windows gleaming, everything designed to project success and respectability. I rang the doorbell. Mrs. Hendrickx answered, a thin, elegant woman in her 60s who looked like she'd never encountered a problem that money couldn't solve. Mr. Reese, she said, clearly surprised. Can I help you? I need to see Sophie. Her face went carefully neutral. I'm afraid that's not possible. Mrs. Hendrickx, I'm going to be honest with you. In 2 days, law enforcement and child protective services are going to show up here with warrants. Rebecca Chen is filing criminal complaints against your husband and Patricia Whitfield. Everything that's been hidden is about to come out. She went pale. What do you want? I want to see Sophie. My wife wants to see her daughter, and we want to offer Sophie and her baby a safe place to go when this all falls apart. Mrs. Hendrickx was silent for a long moment. Then, to my surprise, her composure cracked. She's a good girl, she whispered. Sophie. After everything she's been through, she's kind and smart and resilient. We've loved having her. I believe you. We never wanted to be part of all this. My husband got involved because Patricia asked him to, because the family has always taken care of us. We didn't realize how deep it went until it was too late. You can still do the right thing. Let us see her. Help us protect her. Mrs. Hendrickx wiped her eyes. She's at school right now, but she'll be home at 3. Come back then. I'll make sure she's ready. Thank you. And Mr. Reese, for what it's worth, I'm sorry. For all of it. I went home and waited. At 2 o'clock, Claire and I drove back to Kenilworth. Sophie was waiting for us in the living room. She was small for 8 years old, with dark hair and green eyes that were unmistakably Claire's. She sat very still on the couch, clutching a stuffed rabbit, watching us with the guarded expression of a child who'd learned not to trust adults. Claire knelt down in front of her. Hi, Sophie, she said, her voice trembling. My name is Claire. I'm your birth mother. Sophie studied her face. Mrs. Hendrickx told me you might come. I'm sorry I haven't been here before. I'm sorry I wasn't there to protect you. It's okay. Sophie's voice was flat, practiced. People leave. It's what they do. Claire began to cry. I'm not leaving again, I promise. Whatever happens next, I'm going to be here for you. Sophie didn't respond, but something in her eyes, a flicker of hope, quickly suppressed, told me she wanted to believe it. Sophie, I said gently, some things are going to change in the next few days. There's going to be a lot of confusion. But Claire and I want you to come live with us, you and your baby. Would you be okay with that? Sophie looked at Claire, then at me, then back at Claire. You have a new baby, she said. Emma, Mrs. Hendrickx told me. That's right. Emma is your half-sister. What if you love her more than me? Claire's heart broke visibly. Sophie, I have enough love for both of you. More than enough. I've been loving you from a distance for 8 years. I never stopped, even when I couldn't be with you. Sophie was quiet for a long time. Then, very quietly, she said, Okay. Okay? I'll come with you. But I want to bring my rabbit. Claire laughed through her tears. You can bring anything you want. The first false victory came that evening. Patricia Whitfield showed up at our door, flanked by 2 lawyers. I don't know what you think you're doing, she said, pushing past me into the foyer. But it stops now. Nice to see you too, Patricia. I've just learned that you've been in contact with my attorneys, with Dr. Hendrickx, with Child Services. You're trying to destroy everything I've built. I'm trying to get justice for your granddaughter, for both of them. Justice. Patricia's laugh was sharp and mirthless. You don't know anything about this family, about what we've had to endure, what we've had to do to survive. I know you covered up the sexual assault of an 8-year-old child. I protected her. I protected Claire. I protected everyone. You protected yourself, your reputation, your standing in society. Patricia's eyes went cold. You think you can take on the Whitfield family? We have resources you can't imagine, connections that go to the highest levels. I can bury you, Daniel. I can make it so you never work again, so no one will touch you, so you spend the rest of your life wondering why everything falls apart whenever you try to build something. Is that a threat? It's a promise. Drop this, now, or face the consequences. I felt fear. I'd be lying if I said I didn't. Patricia Whitfield was a powerful woman, and I'd seen what powerful people could do when they felt cornered. But I thought about Sophie, about the baby, about Claire, who'd spent her entire life under this woman's thumb. No. What? I said no, I'm not dropping this. Tomorrow morning, Rebecca Chen is filing criminal complaints. Tomorrow afternoon, Child Services is placing Sophie and her baby in our custody. Tomorrow evening, the Tribune is running a story about the Whitfield family's decades of cover-ups. Patricia's face contorted with rage. You'll regret this. Maybe. But at least I'll be able to live with myself. She left, her lawyers trailing behind her like attack dogs on a leash. Claire emerged from the back of the house, where she'd been listening. That was intense. Are you okay? I'm terrified, but I'm also relieved. Is that strange? No, it makes perfect sense. I've been afraid of her my whole life, afraid of disappointing her, of losing her approval, of being cut off. But right now, watching you stand up to her. Claire took my hand. I've never felt more free. The second false victory came the next morning. I woke up to find that our bank accounts had been frozen. All of them. Checking, savings, investment accounts. Every single one. The message from the bank said there was a fraud alert and requested I come in person to resolve it. I knew immediately what had happened. Patricia's connections. Her promise to bury me. She's trying to starve us out, I told Claire. Make us desperate enough to back down. What do? We go to the bank. We document everything. And we don't let it stop us. At First Lake Shore Bank, the same bank that handled the Whitfield Family Trust, I met with a manager named James Porter. He was nervous, sweating through his expensive suit. Mr. Reese, I'm terribly sorry for the inconvenience. There seems to have been an error in our fraud detection system. An error that froze every account I have on the same day I'm challenging Patricia Whitfield in court. I can't speak to the timing, but I assure you it was a simple mistake. Unfreeze my accounts. Now. Of course. It'll just take a few minutes to process. While we waited, I made conversation. How long have you worked with the Whitfield family, James? He paled. I don't know what you mean. Patricia has accounts here. The family trust runs through this bank. You've probably handled their business for years. Client relationships are confidential. Did she ask you to freeze my accounts? James looked like he wanted to disappear into the floor. Mr. Reese, please. I'm just trying to do my job. And part of your job is facilitating harassment on behalf of wealthy clients? That's not... I didn't... He was sweating profusely now. Look, I can have your accounts restored within the hour. Just please don't make this difficult. I'm not the one making things difficult. Patricia is. And if you're helping her, you're complicit in everything she's done. I left the bank with my accounts unfrozen and a clear message delivered. I wasn't backing down. Rebecca called at noon. The filings are done. Criminal complaints against Patricia Whitfield, Dr. Hendrickx, and the school where Richard Gaines worked for failure to report suspected abuse. Civil suits for fraud, conspiracy, and intentional infliction of emotional distress. CPS is moving on the custody transfer. What about Gaines himself? Indiana authorities have him in custody. The school suspended him immediately after our complaint. They found evidence of other victims. I felt sick satisfaction. The monster was finally facing consequences. What happens now? Now we go public. The Tribune reporter is ready. I've scheduled a press conference for 3 o'clock. The press conference was held in the lobby of Rebecca's office building. A small crowd had gathered, reporters, cameras, a few curious onlookers. In the back, I spotted 2 of Patricia's lawyers, watching with expressions of barely contained fury. Rebecca spoke first, laying out the facts of the case in precise legal language. The cover-up, the falsified records, the child who'd been failed by every adult who should have protected her. Then Claire stepped to the microphone. I want to tell you about my daughter, she began, her voice steady despite the tears on her cheeks. Her name is Sophie. She's 8 years old, and she's the bravest person I know. She talked about the adoption, the years of not knowing, the discovery of what had been hidden from her. I should have been there to protect her, Claire said. I wasn't. That's something I'll have to live with for the rest of my life. But I'm here now. And I'm going to spend every day making sure she knows she's loved and safe. When she finished, I took the microphone. I'm not a lawyer or a victim's advocate. I'm just a husband and a father who stumbled onto something terrible. Something that was hidden by people with power and money and influence. People who thought they could protect themselves at the expense of innocent children. I looked directly at Patricia's lawyers. That ends today. These people thought they were untouchable. They're not. And anyone else out there who's covering up abuse, who's hiding behind wealth and connections, should know. The truth always comes out. Always. The questions from reporters were intense. Accusations flew. Patricia's lawyers threatened lawsuits. But it was done. The story was out. There was no putting it back in the box. That evening, Rebecca called with an update. Patricia Whitfield has been taken into custody for questioning. Dr. Hendrickx has surrendered his medical license pending investigation, and the Whitfield Family Trust has been frozen until the court can determine if any funds were used to facilitate criminal activity. How's Sophie? She's at your house with Claire, right? CPS approved the emergency placement this afternoon. She's here. She seems okay. Cautious, but okay. Good. There's going to be a lot of work ahead. Therapy, legal proceedings, probably years of litigation. But you've done the hard part. You've broken it open. I hung up and went to find Claire and Sophie. They were in the nursery, looking at baby Emma sleeping in her crib. Sophie was holding her stuffed rabbit, watching her half-sister with an expression that broke my heart. Wonder, longing, and the careful hope of someone who'd learned not to expect good things. "She's so small," Sophie whispered. "She is," Claire agreed. "But she'll grow. So will you. And we're all going to do it together." Sophie looked up at Claire. "Do you promise?" "I promise." And in that moment, surrounded by my family, all of them, the ones I'd expected and the ones I'd never known I had, I felt something I hadn't felt in weeks. Peace. We weren't finished. The legal battles would continue. Patricia would fight back. There would be hearings and depositions and all the machinery of justice grinding slowly forward. But we'd won the first battle. We'd dragged the truth into the light. And whatever came next, we'd face it together. 6 months later, Patricia Whitfield pleaded guilty to obstruction of justice and conspiracy to commit fraud. She received 5 years of probation and was ordered to pay restitution to Sophie's therapy fund. More importantly, she was barred from any contact with Claire, Sophie, or Emma without court supervision. Dr. Hendrickx lost his medical license permanently. He cooperated with investigators and avoided prison time, but his career was over. Richard Gaines was convicted on multiple counts of sexual assault involving minors in both Illinois and Indiana. He was sentenced to 40 years in prison. The Whitfield Family Trust was restructured under court oversight. Half of its assets were placed in a fund for survivors of child abuse. And Sophie? Sophie started therapy with a specialist in childhood trauma. She began seeing a child psychiatrist who helped manage her anxiety. She enrolled in a new school, one with rigorous safeguarding protocols and staff who'd been thoroughly vetted. It wasn't easy. There were nightmares, panic attacks, days when she couldn't get out of bed. But there were also good days. Days when she laughed at dinner. Days when she asked to hold baby Emma. Days when she called Claire Mom for the first time, and both of them cried. Sophie's baby, a little girl we named Hope, was adopted by a family vetted personally by Rebecca Chen. They sent updates and photos monthly. Maybe someday, when Sophie was ready, they'd meet again. As for Claire and me, we went to couples therapy to rebuild the trust that had been shattered. It was hard work, harder than anything I'd done in my professional life. But we both committed to it. We both wanted to come out the other side stronger. We did. One evening, about 6 months after everything went public, Claire and I sat on our back porch, watching Sophie play with Emma in the yard. The sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink. "I keep thinking about how this all started," Claire said. "That nurse handing you the wrong baby. Such a small thing. Small things reveal big truths sometimes. If you hadn't noticed the name on the tag, someone else would have found out eventually. The truth always surfaces. Maybe. But you're the one who didn't let go, who kept digging even when everyone told you to stop." I thought about that. I almost didn't, I admitted. There were moments when I thought about just letting it go, focusing on Emma, pretending I'd never seen that tag. "What stopped you?" I kept thinking about what kind of person I wanted to be, what kind of father, what kind of example I wanted to set. I looked at Sophie, who was carefully showing Emma how to pick dandelions. I wanted to be someone who stands up for the truth, even when it's hard, especially when it's hard. Claire leaned into me. Sophie's lucky to have you. She's lucky to have you. Her real mother, finally in her life. We're both lucky. Claire smiled. All four of us. We sat in comfortable silence, watching our daughters, both of them, enjoy the simple pleasure of a summer evening. People sometimes ask me what I learned from all of this, what moral they should take away. Here's what I tell them. Trust matters, but so does verification. You can love someone completely and still ask questions when something doesn't add up. Power protects itself. People with money and influence build systems to shield themselves from consequences. Challenging those systems is hard, but it's necessary. The truth is worth pursuing, even when it hurts, even when it costs you. Because the alternative, living with lies and secrets, costs more in the long run. And most importantly, kids deserve protection. They deserve adults who will fight for them, who will put their safety above reputation or convenience or fear. If you see something wrong, say something, do something. Don't stay silent because it's easier. I used to think I was just a numbers guy, a financial analyst who spotted discrepancies in spreadsheets. I didn't think of myself as brave or heroic. But I've learned that heroism isn't about grand gestures. It's about small choices made consistently in the direction of what's right. It's about noticing a name tag that doesn't make sense and refusing to look away. It's about asking questions that make powerful people uncomfortable. It's about standing up for the people who can't stand up for themselves. I still have moments when I wonder what my life would have looked like if I'd let it go. If I'd accepted the clerical error explanation and moved on. I'd probably be living in blissful ignorance. My relationship with Patricia would be intact. Claire would never have had to confront her painful past. But Sophie would still be in the Hendrickx house, carrying her trauma in secret. Richard Gaines would still be hunting other victims, and the system that protected them all would still be operating, invisible and invincible. Some prices are worth paying. So here's my question for you. Whoever you are, wherever you're reading or hearing this story, what are you willing to notice? What questions are you willing to ask? What truths are you willing to pursue, even when it costs you something? I hope you never find yourself holding a baby with someone else's name on the tag. I hope your world never gets turned upside down by a single moment of impossible confusion. But if it does, I hope you have the courage to dig, to push, to demand answers until you find the truth. Because the truth is out there. It always is. You just have to be willing to look for it. If this story resonated with you, if it made you think about the power of truth and the importance of protecting vulnerable people, I'd love to hear from you. Drop a comment, share your own experiences, and if you haven't already, hit that subscribe button so you don't miss the next story. Until then, stay vigilant, stay curious, and never, ever stop asking questions. 1 year later, the courthouse was crowded on the day of the final custody hearing. Media had been following the Whitfield case for over a year now. There were book deals in the works, documentary crews circling, even whispers about a movie adaptation. The story had captured something in the public imagination. The wealthy family brought low, the secrets dragged into light, the child who survived. I hated all of it. Every camera flash, every shouted question, every stranger who thought they knew our story because they'd read about it online. But Claire insisted we attend the hearing. Sophie's adoption had to be made official, and she wanted to be there when it happened. Sophie was 9 now. She'd grown several inches and lost some of the haunted look that had characterized her when we first met. She still had nightmares sometimes, still struggled with trust, still flinched when men raised their voices. But she also laughed more. She'd made friends at her new school. She'd started calling me Dad, which never failed to make my heart stop. Inside the courtroom, we took our seats at the plaintiff's table. Rebecca Chen was there, looking professionally victorious. Across the aisle, Patricia's lawyers sat in stony silence. Patricia herself wasn't present. Her probation terms prohibited her from attending family proceedings involving Sophie or Emma. I heard she'd moved to Florida, joined a church, started a foundation for children's health, which seemed either deeply ironic or desperately performative, depending on your perspective. The judge, a no-nonsense woman named Honorable Margaret Torres, entered and called the court to order. We're here today to finalize the adoption of Sophie Whitfield by Claire and Daniel Reese, she announced. I've reviewed all the documentation, the home study reports, the psychological evaluations, and the recommendations from Child Services. She looked at Sophie. Sophie, do you understand what's happening today? Sophie nodded, clutching her stuffed rabbit, the same one she'd been holding when we first met. Can you tell me in your own words? Sophie's voice was small but clear. Today, Claire and Daniel become my forever parents. Legally. That's right. And is that what you want? Sophie looked at Claire, then at me. Yes, she said. More than anything. Judge Torres smiled, a rare crack in her professional demeanor. Then it's my pleasure to finalize this adoption. From this day forward, Sophie Reese is the legal daughter of Claire and Daniel Reese, with all the rights and responsibilities that entails. She banged her gavel. Claire burst into tears. Sophie ran to her, and they held each other while I stood behind them, my hand on both their shoulders, feeling the weight of what we'd built. Outside the courtroom, the cameras were waiting. We'd discussed this in advance. One statement, no questions, then we'd disappear. Claire stepped up to the microphones. Today our family became official, she said. We're grateful to everyone who supported us through this journey. Rebecca Chen, the child services workers, the therapists, the teachers, everyone who helped Sophie heal. We're especially grateful to Sophie herself for her bravery and her resilience. She paused. We know this story has captured public attention. We know people are curious about what happens next. So I'll tell you. What happens next is ordinary life. School and homework and family dinners, soccer games and piano lessons and arguments about bedtime. The boring, beautiful stuff that makes a family a family. She took Sophie's hand. We've had enough drama to last several lifetimes. Now we're going to focus on the quiet work of being a good family, and we ask that you give us the privacy to do that. We walked to our car, ignoring the shouted questions. Sophie looked up at me as I opened the door. Dad? Yeah? Are there going to be more reporters? More cameras? Probably for a while, but they'll get bored eventually. They always do. Good. She climbed into her booster seat. I want to be boring, I laughed. Me too, sweetheart. Me too. Driving home, I thought about the past year. The depositions and hearings and endless legal paperwork. The therapy sessions and school meetings and late-night conversations with Claire about how to help Sophie feel safe. The juggling of Emma's needs and Sophie's needs and the needs of our marriage. It had been exhausting, expensive, emotionally devastating at times. But we'd done it. We'd built something real, something worth protecting. Hannah had become a regular presence in our lives. The aunt who showed up for birthday parties and holiday dinners, who babysat when Claire and I needed a night out, who'd testified against her own mother to protect her niece. She was dating a guy named Marcus, a social worker she'd met through Sophie's therapy program. He was kind, stable, utterly unlike the wealthy men Patricia had tried to set her up with over the years. I had a feeling we'd be attending their wedding before too long. The Whitfield Family Trust, under court supervision, had distributed nearly $3 million to abuse survivors and prevention programs. It felt like a start. Not justice, exactly, but something approaching it. Dr. Hendrickx had moved to another state. I heard he was working as a consultant for a medical software company, his days of patient care behind him forever. His wife had divorced him shortly after the scandal broke, and Richard Gaines was in prison, where he'd spend the rest of his life. I tried not to think about him, but sometimes, especially late at night, when I'd hear Sophie crying from a nightmare, I'd feel a rage so pure and absolute that it scared me. But rage wasn't what Sophie needed. What she needed was love and patience and consistency. What she needed was a family that showed up every day, even when it was hard. We could give her that. Claire reached over and took my hand as we pulled into our driveway. "Thank you," she said. "For what?" "For not giving up. When you found that baby tag, you could have let it go. No one would have blamed you. I would have blamed me." "I know," she smiled. "That's why I love you." We got out of the car and helped the kids inside. Emma was demanding a snack. Sophie was already asking about homework. The ordinary chaos of family life resumed, and I thought, this is what we fought for. This moment, right here. The noise and the mess and the beautiful, boring routine of people who love each other, trying to build a life together. The Whitfields had thought they could hide the truth forever. They'd thought their money and power made them invincible. They were wrong. Because truth has a way of surfacing, through cracks in hospital records, through naming discrepancies on baby tags, through the questions of one financial analyst who couldn't let an anomaly go. The truth is patient. It waits. And eventually, it finds its way to light. That night, after the kids were in bed, Claire and I sat on the back porch with glasses of wine, watching the stars come out. "Do you ever think about what would have happened if you hadn't noticed?" she asked. "Sometimes." "What do you imagine?" I considered the question. I imagine we'd be living a smaller life. Not worse, necessarily, just smaller. We'd have Emma. We'd have each other. But Sophie would still be with the Hendrickx. She'd still be carrying all that trauma alone. And your mother would still be running things behind the scenes, making decisions about people's lives without their knowledge or consent. It's terrifying to think about. It is. I took her hand. But that's not what happened. We noticed. We dug. We found the truth. And now we have this life instead. This bigger, harder, more complicated, more beautiful life. It is beautiful, isn't it? It really is. We sat in silence for a while, content with the quiet. Then Claire said, "I want to thank the nurse." "Which nurse?" "Sarah Chen. The one who brought you the wrong baby. If she hadn't made that mistake, that was the thing that started everything." "Do you think it was really a mistake?" I thought about it. Sarah had seemed genuinely confused at the time, genuinely scared of what she'd revealed. But she'd also said the order came from higher up, from the system itself. "I don't know," I admitted. "Maybe someone wanted us to find out. Maybe there was someone inside the hospital, inside the Whitfield system, who was tired of keeping secrets. A guardian angel, or just a human being with a conscience. Either way, I'd like to thank her. I'll see if I can find her." I never did manage to track down Sarah Chen. She'd left St. Margaret's shortly after our encounter, and her trail went cold after that. Part of me wondered if Sarah Chen was even her real name. But whoever she was, whatever her motives, she'd set something in motion that changed everything. Maybe that's how it always works. One small act, one moment of conscience, one tiny crack in a vast machine, and suddenly everything shifts. I've spent a lot of time thinking about what I'd want other people to take from this story. What lessons might apply to their own lives. Here's what I've come up with. First, pay attention. The world is full of small anomalies, discrepancies, things that don't quite add up. Most of them are nothing, but some of them are everything. The trick is being willing to look closer. Second, trust your gut. I knew something was wrong the moment I saw that baby tag. I couldn't explain why, couldn't articulate the logic, but I knew. If I'd ignored that feeling, if I'd convinced myself I was being paranoid, none of this would have happened. Third, get help. I couldn't have done this alone. I needed Marcus the PI, Rebecca the lawyer, Hannah the witness. I needed my wife, my colleagues, the reporters who took the story seriously. Fighting systems of power requires allies. Find yours. Fourth, prepare for consequences. Standing up for the truth cost me. It cost my family. There were months when I wondered if I'd made the right choice, if the price was too high. But I kept coming back to the same conclusion. Some things are worth fighting for, even when the fight is hard. And fifth, finally, remember why you're fighting. For me, it was Sophie, a little girl I'd never met, who'd been failed by every adult in her life, who deserved someone to stand up for her. Every time I felt like giving up, I thought about her, and I kept going. So that's my story. The whole truth, as best as I can tell it. A nurse handed me the wrong baby. I looked at the tag, and it had my wife's maiden name. And from that single moment of impossible confusion, everything changed. My marriage, my family, my understanding of what it means to be a father, a husband, a man, I wouldn't trade any of it. Not the pain, not the fear, not the endless legal battles. Because on the other side of all that struggle, I found something precious. A family built on truth instead of secrets. A daughter who calls me dad. A wife who trusts me completely. That's worth fighting for. That's worth everything. Thank you for taking this journey with me. If this story moved you, made you think, reminded you of your own struggles for truth, I'd love to hear from you. Leave a comment. Share your experience. Tell me about the moments when you chose to dig deeper instead of looking away. And remember, the truth is out there, waiting to be found. You just have to be brave enough to look for it. Until next time, stay curious, stay vigilant, and never stop asking questions. The truth is worth it.